how losing is actually the best way to get better at basketball. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Crossover dreams, but my handle's still weak. Defender snatch my pride, had me feeling antique. But each stumble's a blueprint, plans get redrawn. Practice in the dark till the sun cracks dawn.
The inspiration for this video came in an idea I had for a video that I was going to make about how to make a comeback in a basketball game where you're losing by a large margin. But as I thought my way through that video, really what the bottom line came down to was losing, especially as a newer, younger player, which this video is primarily for, can actually be the best way to get better at basketball. There's the cliche saying that the best way to get better at basketball is to play basketball. Now, drills and workouts, which this channel has nothing to do with, drills and workouts are a close second, but in my opinion, the very best way to get better at basketball is by competing in basketball. But especially for newer, younger players who are just starting to learn, I think the very best way to actually make the best improvements and get better fastest is actually by losing in basketball. So let's talk today about how losing can actually benefit you and why it's so important and how you can actually use it to your benefit. Let's do a deep dive on why losing is actually so important, especially for a beginner. With basketball, just like anything else in life, when you first start to do something new, pursue something new, try to get better, develop a skill set for something new, there's always growing pains because you've never done it before. The example I was going to use for the comeback video, trying to make a comeback from losing in a large margin in a game, was like if you're playing 3-on-3 and let's say you were losing, you're playing to 15 and you're losing like 12-3. And it doesn't really matter how you're losing in that game. So meaning if you're playing 3-on-3, you got two teammates, let's say that you are actually playing relatively well for a newer, younger player, but it's your teammates. They're turning the ball over, they're making mistakes. It's primarily because of them that you're losing as bad as you are. Even if that's the case, the bottom line is there's always going to be growing pains. It doesn't matter whose fault it is that you're losing. The worst case scenario is you and your opponents are not playing well, but they still have a large margin of points ahead of you simply because they're better. They're older, they have more experience, maybe they're bigger, whatever it may be. That's the worst case scenario. You're playing well, they are not, but they're still beating you by a lot. The reason I make that example is because that exemplifies what I want to talk about, which is frustration and embarrassment. You're playing as well as you can, and they're not playing well, and you're still losing by a lot, which that specific situation, that worst case scenario, that's probably the best recipe for you to experience frustration and embarrassment. Now, the inherent problem with being frustrated and being embarrassed is it sucks. Being frustrated and feeling embarrassed, especially against players who are older, better than you, that you're trying to impress and get to their level and overcome, it can suck so bad, and you can be overcome by those negative emotions. The worst thing that can happen is that you quit, you give up. And I know all about that because as a kid, I was a terrible, spoiled baby, sore loser. I hated losing, and I would, from time to time, if I found myself out here just losing and just getting destroyed and embarrassed and frustrated, sometimes I would just walk off the court and just quit. That embarrassment, that frustration is only natural, but it's the worst thing that can happen to you if you let it overcome you, if you let it take control to the point where you give up. Now, I don't mean literally give up, like the kind of way I used to, where I would walk off the court sometimes. It also means like pretending that you're still playing when you're not. So you're so embarrassed, you're so frustrated that you're still on the court, like you're still in the game, you're still playing, but mentally, psychologically, emotionally, you've just kind of checked out. Now you're just sort of going through the motions. What happens to newer, younger players is like, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so frustrated, I just want this particular game to get over with. It may not be that you're just gonna walk off the court and give up for the day or whatever, but it can be what many players do is they'll stay on the court, they'll keep playing, pretending like they're still engaged in the game when mentally, psychologically, strategically, they've just given up. They don't want to look like they've given up, so they don't want to walk off the court, but essentially they have. That's the worst case scenario for how you can let that frustration and embarrassment overcome and take control of you. So let's talk about why that giving up is the worst thing you can do, and then ultimately leading to why losing is actually the best result that can happen for you becoming the best player you can be as fast as possible. So, okay, you're embarrassed, you're frustrated, that's fine, it's natural. The problem, like I said, is you letting that leading you to giving up. One of the worst things you can do in basketball, but also in life, is to run away and try to avoid those negative feelings. If you want to deal with them, if you want to handle them, if you want to ultimately conquer them, that in the future they affect you less and less and less until they just don't affect you pretty much at all anymore. The way to accomplish that is to go through those feelings, experience those feelings, not run away from them, not try to avoid them. There's two things I want you guys to keep in mind when it comes to that frustration and that embarrassment. Number one is being frustrated and being embarrassed are indicators. They indicate that you care. And the more you care, the better. Because people that care about stuff actually try to optimize and get better at whatever that stuff is. People that care, try. People that don't care, don't try. For example, people who want to build a good life for themselves, who think about their future. So if you're a new younger player, you're in junior high, high school, whatever it may be, if you care about your future, the way you're gonna live the rest of your life as an eventual adult, if you actually care about that, then education should be important to you. And that education should be important because it will lead you to be able to have occupation, a job, that not only do you get paid well to do, but you also enjoy doing. You want to do it. You wake up in the morning looking forward to doing and living that life, providing that life for yourself. If you actually care about that, you actually care about that future, you will actually put in the effort to earn that future. Me, as junior high, high school, I didn't care. I didn't care about school. I only cared about basketball. I only cared about being on the basketball court. And looking back now, I wish I would have thought in the way I just gave you guys advice, which is like, build a future for yourself that you actually want, you actually look forward to, that you're actually excited for. But if you don't care, you don't try. But if you actually do care, then you actually do genuinely try. So whatever frustration and embarrassment you experience out here, you experience them because you actually care. Also, the second indicator for what frustration and embarrassment mean is that you're embarrassed and you're frustrated because you're making mistakes. Now, you could say you're not really making mistakes, but because you're newer and you're younger playing against older, better competition, it's the fact that they're better than you is the reason why you're losing. But they're better than you because they have more skill and ability, because they have more experience than you do. Meaning they know and they've been in your position, so they know what you're doing wrong. They know the mistakes that you're making. They know when they see you dribbling the basketball, what mistakes you're making, and thus how to steal the basketball from you. They know what mistakes you're making when you're passing the ball so they can steal that pass. They know how to block your jumper because they look at you and they see the mistake that you're making when you're setting up for your jump shot. Yes, they're better than you, but it's because they've already made the mistakes that you have, and they've gone through the progression of getting better where you just haven't yet. Now, they may be bigger, taller, stronger, faster because they're older than you, but that's just a matter of conditioning. That's just a matter of you getting to their physical ability point, which you will eventually do. But in terms of skill, they have more skill than you because they have more experience than you, and that's not your fault yet. So the mistakes that you're making, the mistakes that they are exploiting in you, which causes that embarrassment and that frustration, are also direct indicators of mistakes that you're making, which means the more mistakes you're making, the more frustrated and embarrassed you're going to get, meaning the more improvement you have and will make. So the better, the sooner you can relate your mistakes and thus your frustration and embarrassment to improvement, the faster you can link the two together. I'm frustrated, I'm embarrassed. That also means I have improvement to make and I will make that improvement. The sooner you can link those two together, the better. Frustration means improvement. The sooner you can train your mind to automatically think that instead of, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so frustrated, I just want this game to be over with, the sooner you can think to yourself, okay, this sucks. I'm turning the ball over, they're exploiting mistakes that I'm making, I'm making bad, wrong decisions out here. The sooner you can think to yourself, that just means I have improvement to make, and the more frustrated, embarrassed you are, the more improvement thus you have and will make because of it. The sooner you can link that together, the better you're going to be able to structure your ability to deal with that frustration and that embarrassment. Because like we said, the worst thing you can do is give up. The worst thing you can do is just like go through the motions because you're sick and tired of being embarrassed and being frustrated and making all of these mistakes and you can't take it anymore. And so you pretty much give up. That's the worst thing you can do, because when you're doing that, you're cheating yourself out of the most valuable tool you have as a basketball player, which is learning in the midst of competition. When you make a mistake, when you turn the ball over, when they steal the ball from you, when you do something stupid out here, you make some kind of stupid decision, that means there is improvement to be made and you can learn, you can at least start to learn from those mistakes right here, right now, in the midst of the game that you're getting beat and you're making those bad choices and decisions in. But you have to go through those emotions. You have to experience them, because the more you experience it, the more you're experiencing the mistakes that you're making. The more you experience the mistakes that you're making, the more you can understand how to improve and get better. But if you give up, now you're cheating yourself out of that learning experience. That's why losing is so important, because as you lose, you can be learning how to get better. The more you lose, the more it bothers you, the better you can get, the more improvement there is to make. And you have to train your mind to think exactly that way. Losing equals improvement. Frustration, embarrassment equals improvement. So now that we've established why losing is so important, let's talk about the best way I can think of, the best way I know of in my 30 years in basketball, how to use that losing to your advantage. So now that we've covered how and why losing can be so important and so beneficial, let's talk about how to actually deal with it when it's happening to you in game. There's no way around this. What I'm about to say is going to sound like coach speak. It's going to sound like I'm an old head. It's going to sound like I'm old school, which I essentially am. But just because it's cliche doesn't mean that it's not absolutely true. And that is when you find yourself losing by a large margin in a game and you're getting frustrated and you're getting embarrassed and you want to just give up, the very best thing you can do is the opposite of that, which is to fight, to hustle, to play absolutely as hard as you can. Now, from a physical standpoint, not only does that mean for you to hustle and play absolutely as fast, hard, as much energy and effort as you can, but as a newer, younger player, you might actually have something physically that your opponents who are older and better might not actually have. And that is that your body, because you're newer and younger, is actually fresher than older, more experienced players. I say repeatedly on this channel, to me, basketball is the most athletic American sport, but the cost of that is the more you play basketball, the harder you play, the more often consistent you play, the more wear and tear you're going to put on your body because you're being as athletic as you possibly can be. So older, more experienced probably have wear and tear on your body that you as a newer, younger player probably doesn't have. They may and very well will be more conditioned than you, but again, that's only something that's temporary that you can work on to catch them sooner than later. But the bottom line is they have wear and tear on their body that you probably don't have, which means you have no excuse, even if you don't have the conditioning that they do, to play absolutely as hard as you can. Effort, energy, hustle, all out. To me, the more frustrated and embarrassed you are, the harder you should play. And that includes mentally. So yes, you're newer, you're younger, you don't have skills and experience yet. I get that. So you may not know exactly what to do when you're out here. The only thing you can do is the best you know how to do. So make the best decisions that make the most sense to you in the moment, in a certain play or a situation. Make the best decisions that make sense to you and just deal with the consequences. Are you going to make mistakes? Yes, but that is actually, as a newer, younger player, that's the point. Expose your mistakes so that you can learn from that. Make the best decisions you know how to make in the moment, which means you're gonna make mistakes, which means the more mistakes you make, the more you know you have to improve upon. And the harder you play, as smartly as you know how to play, you're going to reveal and expose as many of those mistakes as possible. Now, I know there are players out there who are going like, no, I don't want to let everybody see how much I suck and all of the mistakes that I make. Like, I want to hide that from everybody so nobody sees my mistakes and my weaknesses so they can't use it against me. You're new, you're young, you still have so much more to learn. It's clear as day to the average intermediate player out here that you're new, young, inexperienced, you have all of that to learn. You're not fooling anybody. You're not hiding your weaknesses from anybody as much as you may want to or think that you are. You're just not. And the reason for that is not because you suck, but because everybody else has already been through the process that you're currently going through. So instead of trying to hide your weaknesses and your mistakes, just lay them all out. Just let everybody, most importantly yourself, see, know, experience your weaknesses and your mistakes so that the more you see, the more you can experience, thus the more you can learn and improve from. That's why I say play absolutely as hard as you can, as smartly as you can, so that you're exposing as many mistakes, problems, weaknesses as you can. Yes, there will be embarrassment from all of that exposure, all of those weaknesses and mistakes, but when you ask pretty much most player who's has a ton of experience out here, and you ask them, what's most memorable to you in terms of basketball? They will usually always tell you about the failures they had, the mistakes that they made. Because when things go well and you play well out here and you do good things, it feels great in the moment when it's happening, but it doesn't stick. It doesn't resonate because the failures, the weaknesses, the mistakes, the obstacles you have to overcome, that once you eventually do overcome them, that's the stuff that sticks. That's the stuff that resonates. So usually the mistakes and the weaknesses that get exposed are the stuff that you remember most, the most vividly, that are the clearest in your mind, because eventually you will put in the work to earn overcoming them. But if you give up or you try to hide your mistakes and your weaknesses from everyone around you all the time, especially in competition, you're cheating yourself out of those learning opportunities. So instead of running away from the embarrassment, instead of running away from the frustration, just push through, fight through those emotions so you can expose yourself, your weaknesses, your failures, your mistakes as much as possible so that you can learn as much as possible. That is the bottom line of why losing is the best way for newer, younger players to get better at basketball. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, if you found it interesting at all, if you think I made some good points about how you can actually lose and use it to become better as a basketball player, then please subscribe to the channel and let us know down in the comments what you think about losing. What's your experience? How do you deal with the frustration and the embarrassment that comes with losing a basketball game and dealing with it and using it to actually help you get better as a basketball player? But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does hitting that thanks button make any comment you make stand out from any other comment, but it also directly supports the channel when you hit that thanks button. So for anyone that does, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment, like I said, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I'll see you guys next week.
Man down, crowd loud, echo in my mind, but the grind is a ladder, leave the fear behind. Sweat pools like rivers carving out my lane. Pain in the process, beauty in the strain. Bounce back, dribble that doubt to the ground. Losing ain't the end, it's where strength is found. Every miss, every fall makes the story profound. The best lessons, yo, they come from the sound.